Hello and welcome back to The Motivating Force. Joining me as always, we have host Sway, an aspiring Marine Corps officer who's finishing up ROTC and his bachelor's degree in the criminal justice field. And myself, Justin, a motivational speaker who's always more than excited to share all of our wonderful ideas and topics with you guys. I just want to start off this Monday by letting you guys know you always have a choice. And in today's episode, we are not talking about consumerism, where you are abound with thousands of choices for anything, but we're going to be talking about the choices that you make in your personal life and how you actually have more options than you think you do. One of the most common excuses I hear for just about anything involving one's personal growth is that they can't make the changes they want to because they don't have the choice to do so. There are no other options than the path that they've already chosen for themselves, and that's simply not true. So again, today I just want to say, you guys, you always have a choice.
Wait, Justin, so you're telling me that I don't have to live this terrible life? I don't have to keep eating like a pig? I don't have to not work out? That there's the choice for me to actually do the opposite and better my life?
Yeah, 100%.
Wow, that's very insightful. I did not know.
Yeah, you would be surprised, though, at the number of times where people won't think they have a choice, because when you word it like that, you can make it sound really simple, really obvious, but there are things that will get in people's way where, you know, a common one for like, okay, oh, I don't have to eat like a pig, I can eat healthy food. What's the common excuse for that? Oh, well, healthy food is expensive. I can't afford that. Can you really not, though?
Yeah.
Because if you eat healthier foods, you're actually going to be eating less foods because you get more fulfilled and more nutrients in your body. So if you eat half the amount of food to switch over to healthy food, your price isn't really going to double. It's going to stay the same because you're going to be consuming less food.
Right.
You know what I mean? And people don't go through these options in their head. They don't go through these choices. They think they're stuck because, oh, I can only afford the $1 burger. Yeah. You know?
Well, I'm sure an issue with this is the lack of people broadening their horizons in the sense of like the knowledge of all these things. So it's like they just cut it off without knowing more because they're assuming that it's just that one path that they have to go down, that the option for being healthier when it comes to your diet is just a one-way road, but without doing the research behind it or just looking into it a little bit, you'll then find out that there's plenty of options of, you know, like HelloFresh or different delivery services where you can get it on a budget, or you can just shop smarter, go to different grocery stores that don't charge you an arm and a leg for these things, shop local farmers markets where they sell it a lot cheaper and it's healthier for you. So it's the lack of knowing all these other options that's really keeping them stuck in that one-way road.
Like you're saying, you can get really accustomed to those things, which is what we're going to be basing this whole thing around. When we talk about you always have a choice, we're actually going to dive into the psychological aspect of a condition called learned helplessness. And it was one study that was done by Seligman, and he used dogs. And this is going to help it make sense for everybody here today. So, long story short, he took a bunch of dogs, had this room. The room has a floor. They put shocky stuff on the floor.
Shocky stuff, yes.
You know? And then put the dogs in the room. They'd ring a bell, shock the dogs. Okay. So it's your typical case of like classical conditioning.
Okay.
And they waited until the dogs were conditioned enough to where when they rang the bell, the dogs would act like they got shocked even when they didn't.
So the humans are ringing the bell or the dogs are ringing the bell?
The humans.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like set up like on a timer, you know? The humans would ring the bell, the dogs would get shocked. They do it enough times over the course of a couple days until that classical conditioning takes place psychologically in the dogs to where they ring the bell and the dogs are anticipating the shock.
Okay.
Once they got the dogs to be psychologically conditioned for that, they would take the dogs into another room. And in this room, it was kind of divided in half. And they'd put all the dogs on the one half of the room that had the shocky stuff. The other half of the room that was clear and in the open, and they put like I think it was like a 3-foot divider.
Yeah, like a baby barrier or something.
Yeah, so not really anything too hard for the dogs to get over because obviously they use bigger dogs, you know? And nothing that would be too drastic for them to really get over. And they'd wait, they'd ring the bell. And then they would actually shock the dogs again. none of the dogs would jump over the fence to go to the other side. How did they complete this study? They took all the dogs out. They brought in a fresh set of dogs who were not classically conditioned to the shock. And they'd ring the bell. They'd shock the dogs. Every single time by like the second or third bell with all the different groups of dogs, they would all jump over to the other side and be on the other side and not be getting shocked anymore. But the first set of dogs would never jump over the fence to go to the other side.
Yeah.
They would continue getting shocked and just take it for what it is. This is what Seligman used to form the condition of learned helplessness, which is where we get it from today.
Right.
Obviously not a study that I would condone, but it did bring us a lot of useful information.
I mean, I would like to imagine that this was in a time years and years and years before where, you know, animal abuse wasn't like that well known. And I mean, I could only imagine if this was now and this news is coming out, he'd be canceled real quick. But this is also reminding me of, I believe it was Vsauce that made a video about when people, okay, so they had a camera set up in a room. It was like a waiting room. And then the people would go in, but they would take their phones away so that they wouldn't have anything to like pass time. Mm-hmm. So then they would all go in the waiting room, and then there was a box that if you rang the box, it shocked you. And then they set it next to them. That was the only thing that they were able to use in the room, right? And they told him, no, did they tell him? I think they did.
I think they did.
Yeah, that if you press the button, it shocks you or something. And then you would see different people that would walk in, and then the time spans of like 10 minutes to an hour of just waiting in that room with no phone, just sitting there, that some of them would have that impulse to still press the button to shock them just to get some kind of stimulation. And I mean, you can see the drastic change. Some people took seconds before they hit the button, and then other people would not ever hit the button. And then
some people would hit it twice.
Some people would hit it multiple times, but it's that same thing. Like they're making the conscious choice to still hit that button because they don't have anything else to do.
Yeah. I mean, that I remember watching that video. It was really interesting. Don't think it applies to this, though.
No, I mean, I just said it reminded me of it.
I guess, right? Because you do always have the choice.
Yeah.
Be bored or get shocked.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you might choose to get shocked.
I mean, that's why I'm saying it kind of like reminded me of it, because at the end, it is still that person's choice. I was trying to make it more relatable for human beings, not dogs, but, you know, whatever floats your boat.
All right. Well, here you go. Let's make it more relatable for everybody. So through this study, there were 3 attributions that typically apply to someone with a form of learned helplessness. So obviously this comes years later after this research. We learned that learned helplessness is a thing that goes on psychologically, and we started investigating it on people. The 3 attributions that tie to this mostly are an internal, a stable, and a global attribution. So let's go through these real quick and see if any of them ring a bell. Yeah. All right. So the internal attribution is one of self-blame. So in this example, it's easy to use if you take a test and you failed the test. How do you go about that in your brain? Okay. So somebody with learned helplessness that's using an internal attribution, they would just blame themselves. They wouldn't say the test was hard, they were ill-prepared. They would just be like, oh, I'm stupid.
Right.
That would be the internal attribution.
They would just keep like egging themselves down and not want to do better for themselves.
Just put it on themselves. Yeah.
Take the blame for it.
Yeah. And then on a stable attribution, which is where this gets interesting because it's very similar to the internal one. So on the stable attribution, things are the way they are. So they would take the test, they'd fail it, and they would go, oh, I failed that test because I'm stupid. But the difference is they wouldn't take into account that maybe I need to study next time. Maybe the test was too hard for me. There's other variable factors there that just attribute to them just saying, oh, well, I'm just stupid. And just plain and simple, right?
Right.
Nothing that they could do about it. The third attribute, being the global attribute, means that the outcome is based around a large number of situations. And this, I feel, is most common with people who run into issues with personal growth because they want to evaluate globally everything in their life. They're like, all these situations in my life come together to keep me tied down to the position I'm in. I feel like that's the most common thing I see when I'm talking to people and trying to motivate them or help them get out of slumps is they just feel like there's so many different variables in their life that will prevent them from being happy, from moving forward.
Okay. I like that you explained that, because when you first said globally, I was imagining that it was basically like that people are kind of relating their situation to other people's, and they're saying like, oh, well, if he's able to pass the test, why am I not able to pass the test? Or if they say something, why is that not happening in my life? But when you're saying that it's the other attributes, it's like saying that you can't, move to a new state because you have all these other factors in your own life affecting it. Like you have the job, the stability of your job that you hate, your family, your kids are going to a new school, and you don't want to put things at risk to better the life in a different area.
Right.
So it's that. Okay.
Yeah. So like in that case where you fail the test, it's not saying like, oh, well, everybody else failed the test, so it made sense that I failed it. It's saying, oh, well, I failed the test because I wasn't able to study for it because my mom is sick, and I just didn't have the time because then when my mom's sick, I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to do all these other things. So of course I was going to fail the test.
Right.
So it's bringing in all these extra circumstances that lead to that conclusion.
Trying to justify it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes we can get caught up in the way that we do things that we don't even realize that we're limiting ourselves to a very small select number of choices in any given scenario. Like you mentioned before about getting accustomed to the way that things are. So simply put, sometimes we just need to take the step back. We need to breathe. We need to reevaluate. And in some cases, you might even want to detach from the situation. Ooh. Which I know we've talked about before, and I know that Jocko talks about all the time.
Yeah,
he even wrote a book on it.
I was going to say he has a book on it. So yeah, that's an important thing to look into.
100%. There are so many things that detachment does for you. It's a great strategy to implement in your life. But for today's topic, it is something that can be helpful to you in certain extreme situations where, taking the step back, you're trying to breathe, you're trying to reevaluate, and you're like, man, I don't see it. I don't see how I can get out of this, even with the best intentions towards it, right? And you're like, okay, well, take those situations and apply them to somebody else. Pretend it's your friend. Pretend it's your best friend, right? Kind of like what we talked about a couple weeks ago. Pretend it's your best friend going through the things you're going through. How would you try to help them? Because that's the key word there. Try. A lot of times we go through situations in our head and we're like, oh, well, we can't make these situations because it's probably not going to work. What's the harm in trying?
Right.
People don't take that into account anymore. And that's something that I think has a lot of validity to it when you're trying to process these things.
Yeah. Because what's the worst that's going to happen when you try? You fail, but then you try again. That's the whole point of being resilient, is being able to get back on your feet. And I mean, detachment, that's a great tool to have in your toolbox for everything, because I mean, it's very beneficial for this because it helps you broaden that horizon of different options, where when you think it's just you and your life, that you can't do anything about certain things, when you detach from it, like you said, you imagine it being your friend or somebody else, you're putting yourself in that third person perspective where you can really get a grasp of the whole picture and all the other options that are just like hiding around the corner that you're not seeing in that first person view.
Yeah, so that's one really helpful way to help broaden those horizons, help you realize that there are more choices out there for you. And I do have another method, one that I personally use, to kind of open up the window, get in some fresh air, see more choices. And it's a little more ridiculous, it's a little more extreme, but it works for me, so it might work for you guys. And I personally think it's a great way to practice it because it's kind of funny, right? So when you're consciously considering the choices to any situation, you're going to have choices that obviously don't make any sense. And of course, through your filtering system, you just throw them away right there. Don't even have to think twice about it, right?
Right.
I would implore you guys to consider those ridiculous choices, kind of play it out in your head, because at some point, it's actually going to humor you to do that. It's going to be kind of funny to really think through it with some ridiculous choices you can make towards things. But that has so many healthy benefits for you. One being that, humoring yourself, laughing is, nature's best medicine. But it's going to brighten up your mood, which is going to be beneficial towards you actually being able to refocus and being like, okay, let's get serious again. And then when you go into it with that fresh light, you're already freshened up a little bit. You're already in a little bit more of a positive mood. You're going to see more positive options for you. So it's going to help be able to pull you out of that critical slump a little bit better. And it's also going to help steer you in the other direction. It's going to take you down that path where you're like, everything down here is just ridiculous. These aren't the choices I should be making. But when you start walking that way, it's going to make everything else, in my opinion, a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing the bigger picture now. You're seeing further away. Like, obviously, it doesn't make sense if, all these things going on in my life and I'm just going to run away and start again.
Right.
And it's like, dude, you're kind of married.
Yeah.
You kind of have kids. You kind of have, a mortgage you pay for. You have all these things. And it's like, well, I'll just run away. And then you consider it and you're just like, yeah, that's really dumb. Yeah. Obviously you wouldn't consider that. But then when you look back at it, you're just like, okay, well, if I ran away, like, what am I running from? What am I trying to reset in my life? And then you start pinpointing those things that are actually problems. And then you can start working on your options and your choices towards solving those problems.
Yeah. I was actually going to keep that the example that we were using of like the test scenario. So let's imagine like a college, right? So you're the type of person that you learn and you retain a lot of information in a group setting when it's kind of like hands-on. And you've tried for years and time again of trying to study alone, and you've always done it that way, and you keep on failing the tests. But if you humor the other option of, oh, well, what if I go to like a group study session, but you've never done it in your life, so it's kind of like foggy. You don't know what that end result's going to be. You don't know what the experience is going to be. So then when you humor yourself of actually trying to go to one, it's going to clear up that picture when you're actually experiencing it. And because you're the type of person that likes to learn or retains the information in a group setting, when you have other people pitching ideas and stuff, it's not just you. It's going to make you feel a lot more confident in being able to do those things. And then it's going to help you in the long run because then you'll be able to retain the information in the group study session. That's a great thing about, different colleges when they have those peer study groups. But for people that like to go on their mundane, I'm going to keep going by myself and it's only me doing this and I'm the one failing, so why am I going to have to put other people at risk with that? You're not going to like get past that challenge if you don't humor that other option of actually going out and trying different things. You get a bigger understanding of what the other options are. Like you said, you see the big picture.
I guess in that form of consideration there, it's like some of the options that seem ridiculous can only be ridiculous just because they're out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, like you don't know what to make of it. So then you could only go so far. Then you just go, I'm going to toss it. I've never been to a group study session, so what should I expect from it? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not even going to try it. Let me try something else.
It's already too much work.
Exactly. So when you actually try it, it'll be 10 times beneficial for you than just keeping on that track that you were on before.
I like it, man. I like it a lot.
Smart.
It is smart, yeah.
That's an example from experience.
Right. There's always going to be more choices out there for you. Some are ridiculous. Some you'll never do. But you should always still think about them and consider them so that way you're not narrowing your options in the future. Because even for the ones you distinguish against immediately and tell yourself, okay, well, now there really is no other options, and you accept that, the next time that a scenario comes up, it's going to be easier for you to accept that there's no other options. You start getting down that path of this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
Don't become like Seligman's dogs. You don't need to teach yourself that level of helplessness. Always exercise your brain towards more choices. Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. Always consider them, always think about them. Because when you actually get into situations where you do need to make more choices, you're actually well prepared to consider all the options.
Yeah. I actually saw like one of those little videos that play that it's just like a city background with music playing and it's the text that comes up. And it was saying how if you know anybody or if you are a person that says it is what it is, that is a very dangerous person because they're not open to other options. They're not open to change. They just keep going on with how things just get thrown at them, and that you should move away from that kind of mentality because of what we're saying. Like, you have plenty of other options. There's no reason to just take it as it is and just go, well, it is what it is. You have to be willing to make the different choices. In the future, it's the people that are scared of making those choices that end up saying it is what it is. And you shouldn't be that person. You should be trying to not benefit. You should be trying to improve your life every day by making different choices and making the right choices.
I think a lot of that too has to come from like picking the path of least resistance.
Right.
So any choice that involves more work than your obvious choice, even if it has a bad outcome, you're more likely to try to just take the hit, take the bad outcome, because you get the luxury of not having to work so hard.
Yeah.
And that's a really poor way to think about it. But the fact is, human nature is what it is. We're going to go that way because path of least resistance, right? So with this, there is a lot of external factors that will help benefit you into realizing you have more choices. And of course, all that comes with a personal growth journey. You need to get motivated. You need to start eating better. You need to start exercising. You need to start setting goals and plans. And I say those 4 things because in the psychological aspect of going through learned helplessness, those are the 4 steps they actually use to help treat learned helplessness.
Right.
Through cognitive behavioral therapy. And all that is self-growth journey, baby. It's getting out there. It's being motivated. It's exercising, eating good, getting your energy up, because you're going to need that to make some harder choices in your life.
Yeah. And the thing that I was talking about before that I was expecting you to like go on that tangent about, where you're kind of using other people's lives as like what your standard should be, and kind of like relating both of them and saying like, why am I not him, or why am I not getting to that level? That's probably the first thing you should knock out of your head if you're knocking anything out, is that's not an option. Don't compare your life to other people, because like you said, it's a personal help journey. Like, it's your own journey that you're going on. So it's being able to accept that this is your path and that you shouldn't compare it to others is probably the most important thing to start this journey of being able to make these correct changes and choices in your life.
Oh yeah, you already get enough of that in your life as it is, because they, like what you hear all the time anyways, your 5 closest friends are the average of who you're going to be.
Right.
Down to income, personality, everything. Your 5 friends, you average them out, that's you. That's who you are. Which is why that's super important to be mindful of, and always judging yourself against others. Yeah, definitely, man.
And if we don't have 5 friends?
Average up who you have,
yeah,
right?
No,
I don't know, man. But yeah, it's true, and that's why it's good to limit your friend group, That's why I honestly don't even have 5 friends right now.
Well, hey, if you're like us and you don't have 5 friends, go ahead. You got 2 of us right here. You can hit that like button. You can subscribe, hit the bell icon, so then you get notified every time a new video comes out, and we can be an additional 2 to your friend group. And we're here for motivation and trying to get everybody's lives in order, as well as our own. We're working from example. We're speaking our own truth and trying to help others. So, we're going to be a great additional 2 to your friend group to help you better yourself. So you can do that as well. You can comment down below, hit us up on our social medias as well. The links are down below. We have a Facebook and an Instagram. Our videos do come out Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 a.m. EST. And don't forget to check out the Spotify, the Apple Podcast, the Google Podcast, wherever you get your audio podcast from. We are on Anchor FM, and that link is down in the description as well.
And until Wednesday, go on and get